We are live on WNCW with Adida Victoria, speaking with us from Greer, South Carolina at the Albino Skunk Music Festival for Public Radio Music Day. Welcome.
Howdy.
Hey, it's great to have you here. So looking forward to talking to you. And first, since it's Public Radio Music Day, wonder about your experience with any favorite stations perhaps that play music that are public radio oriented.
I will say, so I was born in Spartanburg, and I started listening to public radio around middle school. It was pretty much the only station we could listen to on the Sabbath. My family's Adventist, and I guess public radio was considered holy. And some of my biggest memories was listening to John DiLiberto's Echoes on the Sabbath. And then I also remember during 9/11, when I was in high school in Greenville, we would listen to every morning being read The Miracle Life of Edgar Mint. And that was right around 9/11, so that's one of my imprinted memories of public radio.
That's wonderful.
Is it?
I mean, hopefully.
It's not terrible.
It's
something.
Yeah. I think there's some good nostalgia there, perhaps.
I think I was just like disassociating everything and just listening to that book being read every morning on the way to Malden High School.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So you've described yourself as a Southern eccentric who likes to look back in the past.
Mm-hmm.
What about folks that aren't in that habit? What can we learn from your habit?
I mean, I think everybody's in that habit. It's just a question of whether you're ready to embrace that publicly. I think that's why people look to artists for expression. It's because we are the outward freaks that express their inward freaks. And it's like Flannery O'Connor said, the South can write about a freak because the South can still recognize a freak.
Speaking about your earlier song, South Gotta Change,
mm-hmm.
and it's about John Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what you think about what he went through and all of the brutal repression that he experienced, especially in the 60s. It seems so heroic, like I don't know if I would be able to rise to that level. Do you ever think about that?
I don't think I would describe it as heroic. I would describe it as extremely, profoundly human, recognizing that human need for representation and expression and freedom. And I think that as we've gone along over the course of time, we've become much more dehumanized. And so I would say, would I have the humanity to march across the Selma Bridge and be bludgeoned nearly to death? No. Honestly, no. But there are things leading up to that you can do to help and change and voice change. And I guess my pittance is I sing songs about the need for change at the risk of my career.
Thinking about some of your favorite artists, and I know you've covered Radiohead, who is one of your favorite artists.
Yes.
And you mentioned Billie Holiday
yes.
as one of your favorites, but have you touched any Billie Holiday material, and if so, what would it be?
I actually sampled her song Lady Sings the Blues on my second record, Silences. We lifted the refrain, Lady Sings the Blues, for my song The City. And I produced that record with Aaron Dessner of The National, and we were kind of like biting our fingernails, like, is her estate going to clear this? Because we had to send in the sample, the song that we wanted it featured on, and then like a letter of intent to her estate, and they cleared it. And so I have a song, my song The City, that's featuring Billie Holiday, and it was very expensive and worth every penny.
I think you could do a good Billie Holiday song from start to finish.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
My baby woke me on Christmas Day. He said it's time for me to go my way. I asked him why he wanna say that for. He just packed my bag and put me out the door. And now the snow is falling through the pipe. You used to tell me that your home was mine. At first I was sad, and then I was blue, and now I'm so mad I don't know what I might do. You made me a hearted woman. You made me a woman. You made me a
Thinking about the players from upstate South Carolina, because you're from around this neck of the woods, and there is a lot of music history that many people don't really know about, but a lot of blues from upstate South Carolina, Pink Anderson, Mac Arnold. There's a long, long list of folks that have been in the blues, and I know you love the blues, and you've talked about that a fair amount. Can you comment on what you might know about players from this region?
You know what? I am ashamed to say that I'm not very familiar with a lot of the blues cats, the music, but having grown up here, I'm very familiar with them. I'm familiar with the ways that South Carolina, the upstate, shaped their music, their musicality, their philosophy. And I think without hearing a note of their blues, I would have been able to sit down with them and talk some blues in depth with them about growing up in the upstate of South Carolina.
It's neat to look back as a fan of history myself to see why that was happening, and a lot of it was that Spartanburg itself is and still is a rail hub, so you had a lot of people coming in, and I think perhaps the School for the Deaf and Blind might have had a little bit to do, because back in the day, if you couldn't work, then maybe you could play on the street corner. If
Talking
you were
about Charles Lee?
I think that's it. Yeah.
My mom used to work there.
Really?
Yeah, my mom worked at Charles Lee School for the Deaf and Blind. Little sidebar, one of my earliest memories was going to work with her at Charles Lee and seeing some wild people swinging their heads around as a little girl, and just me mimicking them, like, yeah. And I loved it. I felt very much at home there. I don't know if that's very politically correct to say, but it's the truth.
Yeah, and so you had a lot of, that was the wellspring for a lot of that talent, a lot of that Piedmont blues talent that came from this region.
What else you gonna do? You deaf and blind in Spartanburg. You play the blues.
Yeah.
The song is off of Southern Gothic. The song is a eulogy. It's called My Oh My.
It was a long road that led to you. It was the darkness that fed to you. Sister, I can't say no more. Under the clouds I found you, cutting through the ground like kudzu. Sister, I can't say no more. My come lay your flowers on the ground. My, oh my, come lay your flowers on the ground. Through the shadows you shine through, in my memory I'll keep you. Sister, I can't say no more. How long did you wait for the sunshine to find you deep down in the coal mine? Sister, I can't say no more. My, oh my, come lay flowers on the ground. My, oh Sister, I can't say you no more. Only in my dreams do I find you. You're walking with the moon through the night wind. Sister, I can't say you no more.
Talking about Southern Gothic, your newest record, produced by T-Bone Burnett. Can you tell us about
Co-produced.
T-Bone's? Okay, so tell us about his role there.
So I had these songs that my creative partner and I, Mason Hickman, we'd started tracking and I'd been writing. And I knew I wanted to work with T-Bone in some capacity since I moved to Nashville 12 years ago. And he and I met briefly before the pandemic, and we had a real connection. And then the pandemic hit and everybody went to quarantine. And so it became a process of us sending in tracks to him one by one, and him like just asking for his opinion. Like, what do you think of this? Like, what do you think of the rhythm? I was really interested in his thoughts on like the rhythm, the low end section, because when I think of T-Bone Burnett, I think of dirt and grit and just like that heaviness. And then finally, after we'd all been vaccinated in April of 2021, I actually got to get into a studio with him in Nashville, and he mixed the record, and I got to sit there and watch him mix. And there's so much that goes into a record at that stage of mixing, of layering the songs and putting things in the right proportion and order. And so that was his involvement in this record, is getting that low end right, getting that rhythm right, and then finally mixing it all at the end. And I'm blessed, and I learned so much from him, and I'd like to think he learned something from me too.
Yeah, you've worked with some excellent people, like you said, Aaron Dessner and now T-Bone. You know, you're pretty much top shelf all the way, and I know you're picking up a lot. Are you thinking about perhaps producing for other artists?
Not really. I'm not really interested in taking on that role with. I don't want to be involved in another person's art to that extent. I don't think I have the interest or the social, what do you want to say, skills to do that.
You worked with Rhiannon Giddens recently up in Tryon.
I did.
For the PBS My Music with Rhiannon Giddens, which is premiering next May 2023. And this is all about Nina Simone. Tell us about that experience.
Oh, so I got to go up to Tryon, which was very close to where I grew up, in Campobello and Landrum. And we got to go to Nina Simone's childhood home. I got to climb her magnolia tree and walk through her home, and it's kind of a ghostly experience. I just saw so many parallels between she and I as, you know, little black girls from the Piedmont region of the Carolinas, and it was heavy. And I'm blessed and grateful that I had Rhiannon there as a guide and like a big sister to walk me and shepherd me through that. And I sat on the front porch of Nina Simone's childhood home, and I played my song, My Oh My. I tried to play it. My hands were frozen up. And I think just a lot of memories, a lot of trauma and just things that I repressed came flooding back to me sitting in Nina's house. But it was draining, and it was exhausting. But I think it was one of the most like vital moments of my life, going back home and sitting on the Packlet River and playing my blues for Nina.
That's great. We're looking forward to seeing your set here tonight at Albino Skunk Can you tell us about what we might expect to see and hear on stage?
There's going to be an exorcism. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I grew up in the Southern Evangelical Church. And I remember one of the things that seemed most strange to me was all the adults around me, they always had God coming out of their mouth, but he was never coming out of their heart. And I sat down and I thought with the start about all the young girls, Christian girls, who couldn't seem to belong. They couldn't do right for doing wrong. So I wrote this next song, and I dedicated it to all the young girls, lost girls in the church that I knew growing up in Spartanburg. This song is off of Southern Gothic. It's called The Whole World Knows. One, two,
On a Sunday afternoon, Mother and Daddy shares that good news under the steeple. She's laid and hitched to fill, watching her blood rise as it fills up that needle. Hell and heaven in her arm, got her mother spinning yarn to all God's people. And as quiet as she's kept, and nobody been for yet, the whole world knows. From the time that she was 3, anyone could see the girl was troubled. And to her family's dismay, where they lead her she would stray, she would struggle. She showed up strung out and serene, had a surprise sweet 16, not even humble. Took a bite right out the cake. You didn't say a word of grace. The whole world knows. That exists in a town as small as this, no need denying. 'Cause she was never gonna be the kind of girl her mother need to keep from crying. So she don't bother going far, that's why she's in her daddy's car, busy with dying. So let the church folks say amen, act surprised by the end when the whole world knows. Don't act surprised by the end, just let me rest and say